One of the most common questions that I get asked consistently across the board is, Scott, why do salespeople struggle? And so I'm going to give you one of the answers. I'm Scott Sylvan Bell. I'm coming to you live from San Diego, California on a perfect day to talk about sales and a perfect day to talk about you. And so I'm going to label this series or this video path of least resistance. And I see this a lot when somebody's having a tough time closing deals. What they'll do is they will go into a presentation and they will say the least amount of things possible to kind of get the buyer on board. And they're not giving all the information that they need to, because they're hoping that if they just dangle that carrot in front of the buyer enough, the buyer's gonna be like, you know, you're right, I'm just gonna make this purchase and I'm gonna make it happen. There's no commitments, there's no conversations, there's no emotional engagement. It's just, I'm gonna give the bare minimum possible, because if I spend a bunch of time, energy, and effort with this buyer, then what they're gonna do is they're eventually just gonna give me rejection, and it's not gonna be good, and it's just not gonna work out for me. So the bare minimum presentation is the one where you're just saying enough stuff to get the person engaged, but not really. And I'm going to promise you, I've made this mistake before. I've done this too. I'm not a perfect human being. I make mistakes, right? But I've taken really good notes while I've been doing sales training with people. And this is something that I saw recently where a guy was filling out paperwork, and because he didn't want to have the tough conversation with the buyer about the product and the manufacturer, he kind of squeezed two names in there instead of one. And what that did was that allowed for him to not have to have a conversation about the product or service, because there was two names in there. But see, on the back end, what he didn't realize is when that type of process is done and the buyer's looking at their paperwork, they're like, of A or B, what did I get? Which one is it? It creates a whole nother conversation after the purchase is made. And then it creates some frustration. Like, wait a minute, time out. You weren't truthful with me. You lied to me. And so this is something that can happen to you if you're not paying attention. The sun just like poof, came out. This is something that can happen to you if you're not paying attention and you're trying to do the bare minimum. It creates a lot of struggles and it creates a lot of problems for you. So one of the reasons why salespeople struggle is they're afraid to emotionally engage with a buyer or a prospect and put in the time, energy, and effort, because if they do, that can lead to rejection, right? Like, real deal, it can lead to rejection. And you got to know that. That's part of the game. That's part of what you do as a salesperson, part of what I do. And I know it hurts. Like, every time that you walk out of a call or a buyer walks off the floor and you're like, oh my goodness, I lost that deal. And there's always a sales manager or somebody else asking the question, why? A business owner, what happened? We paid for that lead and you didn't do anything with it. In a robotic world, you would close every lead possible, but like, you start doing the math, that would mean that every time that somebody walks onto your floor, you're just going to close that person instantly. Now, there are a few people out there on the planet who can do that, not very many of them. And so you're dealing sometimes with a statistical process. So that's a huge problem I see is salespeople. They want to take the path of the least resistance, and that path allows them to say the least and not have to have a tough conversation that they need to, because on the back end, it'll come back to bite them. They're thinking, like, if I take this out, I'm going to close the deal. But because they take it out after the product has been delivered or after the person's picked it up, they're like, time out, there's something wrong. You didn't tell me. I don't think you're being truthful with me. And it creates distrust. So there you go. So you got one thing to do from here, just one thing. Find the subscribe button and click on it. And every time I send out a video, you'll get an update that says Scott Bell Consultant sent out a video. You should check it out, which you should. We'll see you soon. Aloha.